Well, we're joined now by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Türk. Volker, thanks so much for joining us. What is your assessment for the scale of this sort of killing that has gone on, and the hope that people can move beyond the desire and need for revenge?
Yeah. I mean, what we have just seen also in this reporting is harrowing. I mean, you cannot imagine what it means for the people who have gone through 14 years of civil war to be confronted again with killings of this kind. I am, however, encouraged by the fact that the interim president, Shara, has announced, and the reporter has just mentioned it, a commission of inquiry, fact-finding and accountability issues, but he has also announced that he wants to specifically focus on trust building with in the coastal region in particular, so to find some way of confidence building and trust building, and I think that's really important.
What hopes are there for that to be meaningfully successful going forward?
So I was in Syria myself for the first time as High Commissioner for Human Rights in early January. And I met with the authorities, I met with civil society, human rights defenders, and it was always very clear that this is a very fragile moment. So there's a lot of need for supporting a country in transition. And in particular, security sector reform, but also transitional justice. Transitional justice is absolutely critical, as well as to find closure to the many missing persons that there are in Syria, because they are on all sides, and it's absolutely critical that closure is found for the ones who have loved ones who disappeared.
What is the sort of reception that you personally got, but more broadly international organisations like the UN get in Syria? Are you welcomed? Is there scepticism? Does the international community have to be careful not to derail progress?
It's very important precisely to look at what the Syrians themselves want. Mm-hmm. And I heard a very clear message from civil society, human rights defenders, but also from the authorities, that they want to be able to define themselves what their future is, because there's been too much interference for much too long. And they have gone, let's not forget, 54 years of brutal dictatorship and repression. They need to define their own way out of this, but it has to be done on the basis of human rights law, on the basis of rule of law. And actually, the interim authorities told me that that's precisely what they want to achieve. So we need to give them a chance. It's very important to give them a chance, but it's also important to find a solution to this incredible trauma that the people of Syria have gone through for the last 14 years.
In the short term, what is the sort of status of human rights in Syria? I mean, what type of supplies do the people have, and how threatened is it by the change in the nature of international aid giving that we've seen in the last few months?
I mean, it is very important, and I've made that very clear after I visited Syria, that the sanctions are lifted. And that's very important, because the economic recovery has to start somewhere, but it has to be done on the basis of human rights. It has to be done on credible security sector reform, so that we don't see the repeat of the pictures that we have just seen. And it's really important that the whole international community comes together around this, because there are also very many spoilers around the area that want to make sure that the transition doesn't work, mm-hmm. that things like this happen again, and we need to prevent that.
What is the mood music amongst the key international players?
I think we hear more unity to help the country to get through this, and that's really key. We need to make sure that they are able to get on with life, and that's what the Syrians themselves most fervently wish.
Just finally, on a separate topic, I wanted to ask you about the situation in Sudan, and how dire it is at the moment, the level of need for more international funding, and again, in light of the changing tone in the international Western picture towards international aid giving.
Well, unfortunately, the war continues between these two men and their armies, and it's a brutal war. It's a war that has already displaced over 8 million internally, has led to refugee outflows, which, by the way, as you just mentioned, with the funding cuts that we have seen, unfortunately, both the humanitarian and the human rights programs are not funded adequately at all. So people suffer as a result. Unfortunately, I don't see at the moment a real exit from this crisis in Sudan. I'm glad you mentioned it because it also doesn't get enough attention, and it's important to put the spotlight on the incredible suffering of the people in the country.
Well, Volker, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. Sorry it's not more optimistic, I guess, to finish on that note. Volker Türk, thanks so much.